Hello there, and welcome to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. Art Burns here, you there, and I hope you're feeling good today. Hope you're feeling better than my little son is feeling today. He's been sick all night, and so early morning, and so if I seem tired, it's because I am. I've been up with him since, like I said, the very early part of the morning, and poor guy's having some stomach issues and having some trips to the bathroom and that kind of thing. And so anyway, I hope you're feeling better than he is right now. And even though he slept for about 4 hours just now, and so he's getting stronger by the minute. So no worries here, but I hope that you're feeling better than he is. So today's topic, and I'm going to make this podcast just maybe a little bit shorter than usual, just because, again, I am really, really tired here. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things. Just the reason I'm doing the podcast, first of all, is because I'm trying to show up. This is what it is right now. I've been wavering back and forth. Like, okay, am I going to do the podcast? Am I not going to do the podcast? Can I do the podcast? I kind of, any second now, he could be, screaming my name. So I don't know what's even going to happen here. Right. But that's the point. I don't know what's going to happen here. Right. So even though in the morning I wake up, it's a work day and I expect to do a certain process of things, right? I expect to wake up, to make my bed, to have some water, to do my push-ups, to do my meditation, then to have breakfast, then to, check in on emails and maybe read a little bit and get myself into the day, right? That's what is the normal day for me, and that's what I expect, right? But nobody factored in the fact that my son might be sick. Right? Nobody factors in that, maybe you lose power from a storm. Nobody factors in that, your car died and you got to deal with that. Nobody factors in life's contingencies, right? Because we can't, right? If we try to live by every single contingency that life could possibly dish up to us, we'd never leave the house, right? We literally could not function like that. So what we do then, especially if we train ourselves in mindfulness and acceptance and compassion and self-compassion and showing up to life, then what we do is we just show up to exactly what life is in any given moment, right? So on a morning where you got very little sleep and your son has been sick and you've been, handling that obligation, well, then this is a day where, that morning routine is not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And that's okay. It's not ideal. It's not what I want, but it's okay. And I can accept what it is. And then I could allow myself to do the podcast when it feels right. If time allows and circumstances allow me to do it, great, I'll do the podcast. And if they don't, well, I can always do the podcast tomorrow. I can do it later. I can send an email out to everybody telling you how sorry I am I didn't get to do it. But life will go on. It's not perfect. And maybe some listeners will be like, you know what, this is too inconsistent. I'm not going to follow this guy anymore. And hey, that would be a loss. But that loss is, again, that's almost like trying to live our life by every contingency, right? Like my son needs me too, right? I need me, right? I need to take care of my body. I need to function before I can do anything out here in the world, right? And so this is what acceptance really means, right? This is what it means to be accepting in the context of mindfulness, right? Or really any kind of context, I guess. But it's really, particularly with what we talk about here is that we train ourselves to just accept what is happening. And in that acceptance, right, that gives us the flexibility. In that flexibility, that adaptability that I was talking about yesterday is what allows us to stay in that window of tolerance. Or in fact, it actually widens that window of tolerance for us. Because if I can accept, one could say that the extent to which I can accept whatever is going on is the extent to which I am impervious to stressors and what the chaos and rigidity that lives outside of that window of tolerance, right? So in other words, if I could accept literally everything, right? And I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I'm close. I'm close. But no, I mean, the death of somebody is, there are certain things that are going to be much harder for me to accept. But if I can't accept everything, well, then what could possibly hurt me, right? What could possibly cause me to go into rigidity or chaos, right? This is where you find, you hear stories about people who have been in prison for, solitary confinement for like 40 years, and they come out compassionate for their captors. I mean, it's a rare story. One very famous one is Nelson Mandela. He was in prison for, decades and tortured and horrifically treated like less than human. And when he was out of prison, he one day saw as the story I remember, and I might be wrong, but I think I remember hearing that or reading rather, that he was at a restaurant and he saw one of the guards who used to torture him. And he asked the guard to come and sit at his table and to share his food with him. Right? There's a very famous story that Jack Kornfield tells about this, which is that two veterans who were prisoners of war, right? They're sitting at a bar together, and the one guy is, feeling very, happy and just, wants to share all the wonderful things that are happening in his life. And the other guy is like really down and angry and just, really bad mood kind of guy, and the well guy says, hey, do you ever think about, I mean, I'm sure you think about being a prisoner of war, and what do you ever think about the people, the guards, do you ever, have you forgiven them? And he says, I could never forgive those, they are all angry and unforgiving, right? And the guy who is living his life and doing well, he looks at the other guy and he says, well, I guess they still have you in prison, don't they? Right? Now, of course, acceptance is a form, or forgiveness is a form of acceptance, right? It's all tied into the same concept, right? And it absolutely does not mean that we don't, do the things in our lives that are right and pure and holy and all that stuff, right? We got to do the right thing, right? We have to try, right? I can't just, look, I can do anything, right? But if I just sit upstairs and say, you know what? I'm not going to bother with the podcast today. I just don't feel like doing it. Just not feeling it, Well, then I'm not going to have a successful podcast, right? I mean, I can live like that. Nobody's going to come and put me in chains for not doing that, but I'm not going to have a successful podcast. I'm not going to be a successful coach. I can go get a job working at wherever, in an office or a store or a warehouse or whatever I want to, a farm or something, right? But I wouldn't be able to do this that I'm doing because this requires a certain level of consistency. Right? So I have two different variables going on, right? I have a sick son and I've got a podcast that I'm obligated to do, right? So now, of course, when push comes to absolute shove, my sick son is going to take priority all the time, right? I'm sorry. I love you all, but I love him too, and he needs me, right? He's a young child who might need me, very viscerally and physically need me, right? And so if he does, I have to be available to him. Right. And I've done, 560 some odd podcast episodes, you can go check out an older one for one day. Right. But anyway, the point is, though, that I have these two variables. Right. So I have to accommodate the sick son and the obligation that I have to the podcast. And also, theoretically, I have the obligation to my morning routine, which I love my morning routine, right? Like that I described earlier. I mean, it's everything for me. And I really do not like to mess with that. Pardon me. Sorry, I got some allergies going on. I'm a little itchy nose. And so the point is, though, right? So all three things cannot happen. Right? I can't, and the other variable is I always like to do this podcast before the day gets really, ahead of me, right? I like to do it early. I like to wrap it up before 10 o'clock in the morning or so, because then it's done. And I also have a certain preparation and a certain, process that I go through, and that really lends itself to just getting it done in the morning, right? So there's four things there, that are all necessary and expected, right? But they all four can't happen the same way at the same time. They just can't. So, or if I try to make them do that, then something's going to suffer, right? Either I'm going to suffer, my son's going to suffer, you are going to suffer, because maybe if I force it, I won't come up with as powerful of a episode today, right? Like if I tried to squeeze it in earlier this morning, when I was really exhausted and my son was, still like really, getting sick actively, and I needed to like be there, So instead, if I'm like rushing it and trying to do it, I'm like half thinking about him up there and then trying to do that. And, you're going to get, not the full thing. You're not going to get all of me at that point. Right. So what do I have to do? I have to accept the fact that all these four things just cannot happen at once today. They just all can't happen the way that I expect them, the way that I want them, or the way that they should happen, right? It's just not possible. And so if I accept that, well, now I open things up, right? So it's not impossible for me to do the podcast at 12:13 and then 12:30. What is it? 12:13. It's a weird number, right? 12:13. It's nothing wrong with doing it. I mean, it's not impossible for me to do it now, right? It's not impossible for me to do it if I'm a little tired, right? And I've already talked to my son, and he's accepted the fact that, yeah, you can go downstairs and do your video today right now, because I'm okay right now. He took a shower after he got up, and he's feeling much better. He got out of that shower. He says, I needed that. And asked me for an apple and a glass of water. So, I mean, he's a 10-year-old kid. He might be completely 100% now. That's how kids' bodies are. My body, I'd be like, I'm queasy for 2 days after that. But he's like, let's go for a bike ride. Who knows, right? So that's the thing, right? If we can all accept what is, then we can, when we make that the constant and everything else becomes the variable, now we can work with it, right? So this is along the lines of today's topic. I'm going to have a little tea here. Pardon me. I'm really, really tired today. This is my super high caffeine tea. It has all of like 75 milligrams of caffeine in it, which is like nothing. Oh my gosh! I used to drink at one point I put on a one of those questionnaires for an acupuncturist. She asked how many cups of coffee you drink every day, and I put 10, and I was like, probably more, And she's like, 10? 10? I was like, yeah, like in the morning. Hit me up in the afternoon for like 3 or 4 more, probably, But seriously, that's the way I used to live. It was terribly unhealthy. Didn't feel good. It wasn't good for me. It was like living in a constant, But of course, it fed into the stress feeling, so it felt good to me. But anyway, so now the most of the tea that I drink actually only has about 10 milligrams of caffeine, or 15 or something like that. So it's like nothing, right? And so this is the heaviest one I have, which is a blend of green and black tea. And has 75 milligrams. A typical cup of coffee, just so you know, is around 100 milligrams. And that's just typical coffee, right? But I used to drink that like high octane stuff, So anyway, back to our podcast here. Pardon me. I know you're not here to talk about tea here. But it is good. It is giving me some energy. So what I wanted to talk about today is kind of, involved in that concept of acceptance, right? And I say that acceptance is everything, but it's not, right? It's not, because the thing that comes before acceptance, and this is the thing that comes before everything, seriously, right, is awareness. Right, that's what all the practices we do. We're not practicing acceptance, although we kind of are. We kind of are when we're in meditation, and we find ourselves wandering, our mind wandering off with some thought. When we accept that we've wandered, we bring it back. So in a sense, we are we practice accept that we wandered, and now we let go. and now we return, right? So it is kind of practicing acceptance and letting go when you're doing formal meditation or any kind of meditative practice of meditative process, whether informal or formal. But what these practices are all really doing is increasing your awareness. Now, this is key to everything, right? And it's beyond the world of spirituality or woo-woo or anything. Like Dr. Dan Siegel, who I reference all the time here, as you probably remember, I am in a 6-month course with him right now, which I'm loving. It's like, like some middle-aged men go to like fantasy baseball camp, For me, it's like Dan Siegel course, and I get to talk to all these other people who are into him. So anyway, so he actually, one of the very first lessons I ever learned in mindfulness, and this is going back, and this is going to tie right into what we're talking about today, since we're already talking, about 7 or 8 years ago, I watched a video of Dan, and he talked about he talked about the awareness, right? He says, picture your awareness as the size of an espresso cup, or an espresso cup filled with water, right? So that represents your awareness, right? Is an espresso cup filled with water. Now, take a teaspoon of salt and dump it into that espresso cup filled with water, and you have salt water. You have a water that's completely changed, right? There's no semblance to what it was before, and you really can't use this. Like, there's nothing you can do with this. It's salt water. It's gross, right? Now, take that espresso cup and the same water and the same salt, but now you're going to create more of the water, right? So instead of an espresso cup, picture like a 3-gallon jug, like that you would see on like the water machine in an office, right? Now you put a teaspoon of salt into that water, you won't even notice it. It literally won't even register, right? And so that's the way our awareness goes, right? That the more we are aware of everything, when something comes in, it's easy for us to assimilate that thing into our moment-to-moment experience rather than being completely thrown off and disrupted by it, right? And this is why, when people have, this is why when people are suffering from chronic stress, their awareness is tunneled, right? It comes very, very small, right? Because you're just looking at what's right in front of you, like what do I have to do to survive? Right? So you're not taking in the whole picture. You're not taking in everything that's going on. You're just taking in a sliver of what's going on. And that's making you disproportionately afraid and causing disproportionate levels of stress. And so that's what's happening. And so that's why the awareness of knowing that there's something to accept is really the key, right? The acceptance and the letting go become very simple, right? It's the seeing it and knowing when it's appropriate. That's the key. That's why they say that what they call the 3 poisons, right, are acceptance, or the opposite of acceptance, which is clinging or grasping, and the opposite of letting go. Opposite of acceptance is aversion, and the opposite of letting go is clinging and grasping, right? But they say that these 2 poisons are born of the bigger poison, which is delusion, which is the inability to be aware of what's happening, and specifically in a non-judging way, right? Because you might be aware of things, but you're probably assigning values to those things, right? That's what also people with stress do, right? We assign, and this could be chronic post-traumatic stress as well as just daily chronic stress, right? Usually very tied together. So the idea here is and this is what I wanted to kind of get into here today, is that the awareness, right, includes the physical awareness, right? Now, in my journey here, right, to get to this point where I'm only drinking, 75 milligrams of caffeine in my tea on a strong day, right, and also feeling the way I feel, being as healthy as I am. I mean, I've told you all all the stories, right? I've lost 100 pounds. I gave up alcohol and drugs, and I'm completely a different person now. My blood pressure is perfect. My body is in great shape. My doctor's appointments are like a thing of celebration now, where they used to be just completely filled with shame and guilt and fear, right? Because I was really unhealthy, right? So it's the awareness that has allowed me. Well, what I wanted to say was that the first step in all of this, right? It's been basically a 10-year process for me. The first step was to give up alcohol, right? Because I realized that alcohol was providing me with a feeling, and of course other drugs were involved, but alcohol was the main sort of, tip of the tip of the spear, as they say, right? And so the alcohol was making my body feel a certain way all the time, right? Because as I've said many times, in almost any circumstance, anytime you found me, right, I was either drunk, I was on my way to getting drunk, or I was hungover. Those were the three. I mean, there was 1 in 100 chance maybe that I was just okay that day. Like, I didn't drink the night before. I wasn't drinking right now. That happened maybe 3 times a year. Seriously. Like, maybe, right? Like, I didn't have one night a week where I just never drank. None of that stuff, right? And so what happens then is that there's a certain feeling in my body and my brain and my mind and everything that's happening all the time, right? So what that did was that disguised my true feelings. And that's why now, 10 years later, I just passed my 10-year anniversary, 10 years of sobriety. If you met me 11 years ago, you'd be like, this guy's going to die a drunk. And here I am, right? And so what that does is that allowed me now to be aware of the deep levels of trauma that have caused all of this, right? Now I've been open about that, and I've gotten a couple of comments from people, and I just love you all, and I'm just so appreciative that you're resonating with my messages. So I'm not going to go too deeply into it, and also, we're running late here. I said it was going to be a short episode, but I'm like crunched for time already here now. But the idea is that, it was this awareness that allowed me to find the trauma in me, right? And so if you are someone who turns towards chemicals of all kinds, right? And this could be even taking, Tylenol and stuff like that. I strongly urge you to at least, and I'm not saying you can never take Tylenol for a headache, right? Don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying that. That's not my thing, okay? But what I would encourage you to do is the next time you have a headache, wait an hour before you take the medicine. Wait 15 minutes before you take the medicine. Be with the feelings of your body. Okay, even if they are uncomfortable, okay? Try it. See how it feels, okay? You don't have to torture yourself, but see how it feels. Maybe do it once, okay? And the other thing concerning awareness is the negativity bias, right? Now, I talk about this a lot. This is a very strong implicit bias. It's present in all, certainly in America, it's like everyone, right? And for some people, it's very, very strong, okay? Negativity bias is simply the implicit bias that makes you notice the negative more than you notice the positive, right? So you're likely to notice, you're likely to notice a stick that looks like a snake before you notice a pretty flower right next to that stick, right? That's not a snake, right? And it's just your brain's effort to keep you safe, right? It's all it is. There's nothing wrong with it. But it can go off the rails, especially for survivors of trauma. Because people have survived trauma, whether it's complex trauma over a very long period of time or it's a singular traumatic event, you have a sense of fear in you that is not just going to fade away, right? It's something that you're afraid because you had this experience where you almost did, die, or you had many, instances, many experiences where you weren't sure if you were going to survive. That's really what the trauma is, right? Or you witness somebody dying, or you witnessed it, right? Like that's the thing, right? That level of fear, that level of terror. That's what trauma looks like, right? And so for people like us who have gone through these kind of things, especially once we stop anesthetizing ourselves with alcohol and antidepressants and overeating and overworking and doing all those things so we don't have to pay attention to it, right? Once we stop doing that, now we're faced with, wow, here's the negativity bias, and look at all of this negativity in my mind right now, right? And so the thing is, the really important thing to understand about the negativity bias is that it's just a story that our mind's telling us. I could even say it's a lie in most cases, right? Because the thing is that the negativity bias is not indicating that there are more negative things happening in your life. It's just that your awareness holds on to the negative things more than the positive things. And so I want to share with you a very simple practice, which I've shared here before. I don't know who needs to hear this today, okay? But a gratitude journal is the antidote for this, okay? When we practice gratitude, what we're doing is we're practicing paying attention, bringing awareness to the positive aspects of our lives. Again, a gratitude journal does not mean more good things happen to you in your life. It just means that you're paying attention to those. You're widening your awareness to include the positive things along with the negative things that your brain automatically throws in there for you. So how do you do a gratitude journal? It's so simple. Okay, I really recommend doing it at night because you set yourself up for some good dreams and some good sleep, and just going to bed with a positive, essence means that you're going to wake up mostly with a positive essence too. So it's very, very powerful. Okay, so all you're going to do is you're just going to write 5 things down every night before bed. 5 things for which you're grateful today or right now. Okay, or what happened today. Well, it's fine. You don't have to be too technical or specific. Now, here's the thing. In the first couple of weeks, you're going to say, I'm grateful for my job, grateful for my family, grateful for my food, my blah, 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 all that sort of low-hanging fruit, as I say, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Those are things absolutely qualify as gratitude, right? 100%. But you can't repeat things. Okay. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to look every night, look back through every entry you've done to make sure you don't repeat anything. That's not what I'm talking about. But you can't just keep saying, I'm grateful for my house, my family, my food, my car, and all that. You can't use the same thing over and over again. Okay. So the thing here is that, for the first week or so, you're going to have just all that low-hanging fruit, and you're going to fill up your basket every night. No problem. Keep going. That's great. Now you got to start looking for things, because the obvious stuff is already in the basket. So now we got to start looking for things. And as we start looking for things, now we're bringing into our awareness the positive aspects of our lives, which will balance out that negativity bias and allow you to function from a place of emotional neutrality as opposed to emotional negativity. And this is going to be a great part of your practice, and I promise you that. So I hope you get to try it. All right, everybody, I'm going to go check on my son. I hope you all have a great day today. I wish you well, and I'll be back again tomorrow. Oh, no, I'm not back again tomorrow. Tomorrow's my weekend. So today is Sunday, so tomorrow's my Monday, my Tuesday. Those are my weekends. So I'll be back in a couple of days for you. But if you have any questions, please always feel free to email me anytime. I love getting your emails. I love the comments on YouTube. I don't think you can leave comments on the podcast. And if you have left comments on the podcast, I have not seen them, so I apologize for that. But I do love to hear from y'all. So please, please, please reach out with anything you have in mind. Okay, whether it's about the podcast or about something else. I'd love to hear from you. All right, everybody. Have a great day, and I wish you well. Bye-bye.